Alright, so Ragnarok chapter 105 and Apocalypse of the Gods chapter number 14. We're going to talk about all the things to come in those chapters next month. Give you guys some predictions and go over the previews if they have them. So first things first, we're going to start with Apocalypse of the Gods. They do have an official preview for us. It says, Suzaku's divine treasure and Indra's lightning fist collide. The two gods fight fiercely in an extreme situation. So that confirms for anybody wondering that Indra is not defeated at the end of the last chapter. He is at least going to make it into the next chapter to be able to fight. Also, as I'm sure you noticed the background, they did just release the cover art for volume 3 of Apocalypse of the Gods, and this is the full thing in its entirety. I do think they did my boy Indra a little dirty here. I don't really know what the hell is up with his face in this. There was like a fan edited one that I think does look better. It is also a little bit odd because it clearly is him posing like he's going to be taking a puff, but they don't obviously show what he's smoking on, probably for censorship reasons. But yeah, I do really like Suzaku's design, the red hair fitting of the vermilion bird, and I do like the color scheme, the pants being purple and everything. Now, one thing I noticed going back and really rereading it is that Indra really does seem like the superior fighter, despite the optics. So it's easy to just kind of see the end of the chapter and be like, damn, Suzaku's really beating the shit out of Indra, and it looks like he has the upper hand. But if you really go back and look, you know, if you kind of have like more of a power scaling mindset on it, Suzaku is really only inflicting damage on Indra and landing hits when he catches him by surprise. So obviously the first time Indra takes damage is obviously when he punches into the divine weapon of Suzaku. This was obviously something unexpected that caught him completely off guard. And then the next time at the end of the chapter, right before they can clash, Suzaku of course shoots the kunai at Indra, and Indra reacts pretty easily, gets out of harm's way, but it's only because there was like a boomerang effect where the kunai come from behind him that they actually land and stick in his back. The boomerang effect, seemingly having Suzaku calling back the kunai at the last second to stick in Indra's back, created the opening for Suzaku to land the slash. So basically, if Indra doesn't hesitate there, doesn't get caught by surprise, he may have very well landed his attack first, which is congruent with basically how the battle was going beforehand, because I don't think this divine weapon amplifies Suzaku's speed. He was getting overwhelmed by the immense speed of the Vajra technique. Multiple times Indra landed clean hits on Suzaku that were all on guard. Perfectly valid feats that Suzaku just simply couldn't handle. They were even bypassing his guard. He was being outpaced badly. So I think as long as Indra understands what he's up against from this point forward, he should be able to recapture control of this fight. The big problem is, how is he going to bypass this divine weapon? And it does seem that the kunai is able to move without his detection, because obviously we saw in the multi-man fight with Suzaku's subordinates, even when people tried to attack him from behind, he was able to react to them and able to sense their presence. It didn't seem like that was the case with the kunai, or potentially maybe the kunai moved faster than the lightning could potentially pick up, but I think it's more in line with it potentially just like not being registered, which maybe he just has to fine tune his Vajra to start sensing it, but he has to be able to bypass the defense first and foremost anyway, because anytime he's going to strike Suzaku is seemingly going to protect himself with these spikes. But I did see this comment here, which I thought was pretty interesting. Frost the Goat says, not gonna lie, I really want to see Indra use his lightning even more as an offensive weapon instead of a speed buff as it is right now. Maybe he can use the lightning to stun or break the Phantom Blades. Now that may be wishful thinking, but it does seem very pragmatic. I would like to see some kind of explosive element to Indra's lightning as well, to potentially destroy the kunai on impact if they were to get to his body. Now I'm not sure if something like that's gonna happen, but it would be really cool to see. At this point, I'm still undecided on who's going to win. I could truly see this going either way, but I wouldn't be surprised if Indra does still pull this out, just because I don't think after hyping Indra up so much, especially with like all the Shiva statements and comparing him to Shiva, that they're going to have Indra just lose like this. And I do think that inevitably he will be able to overcome Suzaku. Could be completely wrong on that, but that's just my gut feeling right now. I'm interested in what you guys think about that fight though, as it's really cool. Now moving on to the main series with Ragnarok. We don't have an official preview again this month, which is kind of odd. 2 months in a row we don't have an official preview for the main series, but it adds all the more intrigue to what's going on because it keeps us in the dark on everything. Once again, here is the full background that you see on the screen. This is for volume 25. Again, color schemes for both Loki and Simo. Loki's is well known. Simo with the green and white, I think it's pretty good. One last note on the omission of a preview. Maybe that leads you to believe that the fight may continue past this next chapter, because usually if it's going to be the last chapter of a fight, the preview will say something like, oh, round 11 reaches its final moments or climax or whatever the case. So maybe you could take this as soft confirmation that we're going to get at least 2 more chapters. Now, what I will say is, again, going back and checking things over, we understand this chapter that ever since this moment when Loki enveloped the village with the dark mist, he basically left the fight and let his clone do all the dirty work and take on Simo. He also gave his ring to the clone, which the clone has the ring on his corpse. Now, there's a lot to take from this. When I went back and checked, when he does create the mist, he already had an Odin, a Hercules, and a Thor clone out. We know that he can only have 5 clones when he doesn't have the ring on. There's also this shot of this rabbit that was in the position where Simo fired his first shot. So I think that this was probably the same rabbit that he made a clone, and was probably the same rabbit he ended up warping into that was already scanning the area for Simo. I would assume that that is the 4th clone. Now, obviously no confirmation on that, but that's just what I assume at this point, especially because, you know, the rabbit even has that little question mark there where it's almost like he expected Simo to be in that spot, but he had already gone. So I think that's 4. Then when he makes the Loki clone, that was 5. So he reached his threshold for the main body. Then the clone had the Ring of the Jester and then had the infinite clones. We got this mentioned again within this chapter that he can still only use 5 clones right now because he does not have the ring. He just made a Loki clone, a Thor clone that we see attacking Simo from one direction, the Hercules clone that grabbed Simo's attention and forced him into sacrificing his spleen. This is the clone that he teleports into at the end of the chapter. That's 3. He was still counting the Loki clone that was shot that has the ring in his assessment mid-chapter. So that would make 4. It is also a little bit peculiar that this clone that seemingly is dead is still fading away after all this time. Like, we've seen these other clones, you know, just pretty much completely dissipate by this point, but yet this specific clone is still fading, and he basically said he can't teleport into it because it's already dead, but it's not faded away yet and it still counts for his counter. I'm interested what you guys think about that, but regardless, that's 4. That means that there still should be a 5th clone option for him to use, right, that we have not got disclosed yet. That could be his ace in the hole, or what his true plan is in this moment. Look for that this next chapter. I saw this comment, and there was a plethora of other comments that alluded to this as well. People think that Simo has another gun within his coat, a submachine gun, something that he did use throughout history. Now, I question how that would work functionally, because we obviously know the toll it takes for Simo to fire these rounds. He sacrifices one of his organs for each bullet. That is with a sniper. Snipers are obviously one-shot mechanisms. A submachine gun is going to be rapid fire, so that's going to be a ton of bullets, which would be basically cataclysmic for a character like Simo, that in every bullet he is sacrificing an organ. If he shot out a clip of 30, that man's going to be dead. Now, it could be different because a sniper's bullets obviously hit much harder, so you could maybe look at it like, with the PPSH, he might just sacrifice a little bit of power to lessen the toll it takes on his body. Maybe he starts shooting out chunks of his skin, not his entire body of skin, but maybe chunks of his skin for each little bullet. I'm sure other people can come up with some other creative ideas for pieces of organs that he could shoot out with submachine gun ammo. That's a creative thing that they could potentially go into for Simo in close quarters if he gets pushed that far. I think that a lot of people would like that. It would also force Loki to come up with a new plan. But I do think that if that was the case, the only way to make sense of it would be the bullets have to be greatly diminished in power. What is your guys' predictions for the next chapters of Ragnarok? Drop those predictions, get them in before these chapters come out. Let me know any theories you guys have as to what's truly going on behind the scenes. I'll catch you guys all in the next one. Peace.